All right, let's talk about the 5 main shortcuts that use people. It's not that you use these shortcuts, it's that these shortcuts use you. And they don't just use you in home buying or selling. We're just gonna look at them inside that context. We're gonna look at how they impact you when you're buying or selling your home, but we're gonna first look at the 5 main shortcuts. And what are those shortcuts? That Kahneman and Tversky named heuristics. These are the mental shortcuts that use people. And they're not the only 5. There's hundreds of these cognitive biases that influence how we think. But we're going to look at these 5 and how they impact the home buying and selling process. The first one is representativeness versus base rate. In other words, there's a base rate likelihood of something happening, and then there's what we consider to be representative of the way that thing looks. I'll give you an example so it makes it clear, okay? I'm gonna flip a coin 10 times. Which one of these 2 is more likely to happen? Now, most people are gonna think the first one is more likely to happen. Most people look at that and go, for sure the first one's more likely to happen, except that's not true. They're each as likely to happen. Any 10 coin flips is as likely to turn out left top way as it is the bottom way. But if you're arguing about how the first one, because the first one looks to you like a random coin flip would look, and the second one doesn't. Said another way, the first one is representative of what a random coin flip looks like in your head. It's representative. You have a picture of a random coin flip in your head, and the first one looks more like it than the second one. Okay, but the coin doesn't care what picture you have of it in your head. To flip a coin 10 times and have it come in that exact order is in number 1, you'd have to flip the coin as many times to have it turn out that exact order as you would to have it turn out the exact order in number 2. It's as likely to happen. But we're really bad at guessing the statistical likelihood of things to happen because we already have pictures in our head of the way things look. We already have pictures. We already know it's representative of it. Another example, this is exactly the example that Kahneman wrote to demonstrate this to a room full of statisticians. Okay, ready? Here it is. Meet Tom. Tom is of high intelligence. Although lacking in true creativity, he has a need for order and clarity, and for neat and tidy systems in which detail finds its appropriate place. His writing is rather dull and mechanical, occasionally enlivened by somewhat corny puns and by flashes of imagination of the sci-fi type. He has a strong drive for competence. He seems to feel little sympathy for other people and does not enjoy interacting with others. Self-centered, he nonetheless has a deep moral sense. The question Kahneman asked people was this: which degree is Tom more likely to be studying for? An engineering degree or a social sciences history degree? Now, most people, the majority of people answer that he's more likely to be studying for an engineering degree. Why? Because that's the picture you have in your head of what an engineer is like. Except there are 17 times more students of history, social sciences. 17 times more people are studying for that degree than an engineering degree. So he's way more statistically likely to be studying for a social science history degree, a liberal arts degree, than he is engineering. Why? Because most people are studying for liberal arts, not that. What if I told you he was a vegetarian and liked to smoke Marlboro Lights and liked New Age music? Would that influence? Would that mean, oh no, he's not going to be an engineer? What if I told you that he loved taking long walks in the park, loved talking about Renaissance painting, and loved great literature? All right, well, you think, no, same thing. What you know about him is irrelevant statistically for the likelihood of him behaving anyway in a large group of people. You don't need to know that information. In fact, the more information you have, the more detail you have, the more likely it is to paint a picture, the more likely you are to rely on that picture and not the actual statistical relevance of the event. Now, why does this matter? Because when you go to shop for a home, And when you go shop for the members of your team, a lender and a realtor and the title company and all the other people you're going to put together to have you buy or sell a home, you're either going to go by the picture you have in your head of what makes a good one, or you're going to actually look for the statistically relevant data that makes one better than another. We'll get into it when I show you, but in the meantime, that's representativeness versus base rate. The likelihood you are to use the picture you have in your head versus the actual, in reality, statistical evidence of something being the case. Representativeness versus base rate, one of the shortcuts that we use, or use us, ha. All right, the second shortcut, the availability heuristic. What is the availability heuristic? The availability shortcut, the shortcut that uses us, that's called availability, basically at the center of it says, if something is more available, more easily available to the mind, it's given extra weight. It's considered more important. When you think about the design of the brain is designed to keep you alive, right? It's not designed to have you thrive, it's designed to have you survive. All right, well, given it's designed to have you survive, its job is to use as little energy as possible in coming up with choices. So if something is relevant, if something looks like it's relevant and it's easy for the brain to access it, that is, it's right there and available, the brain is going to give it extra weight, extra significance. It's going to think it's more important than it really is, or than it could possibly be. An example you've probably encountered in your life. You've been driving down the road, you see an accident. Oh, there's an accident. What do? You slow down. Now, do you slow down just for that? Or you drive a little slower, depending on how horrific the accident, literally depending on how vivid the accident was, will impact how long after you see it do you adjust your driving speed. Just watch, don't you? You see an accident, now you're driving for another 10 miles and you're more careful than you were before. But the road conditions are the same. There's no reason to be more careful now than there was before, except in your brain, what's available to your brain is the gruesome image of that accident. So for 10 miles, you're careful, but then 20 miles down the road, you're driving the way you were before the accident. Why? Because it's no longer as available to you. It's why you can say time heals all wounds, because that which is less available to your brain has less impact on you. This is massively impactful when you're shopping for a home, or shopping for a realtor, or shopping for a lender. It's massively impactful when you're shopping for anything. There's $1 billion a year being spent to make sure that what's available to your brain when you're in the grocery store is that slogan, or that jingle, or that logo, or that brand packaging, so that you grab that toothpaste, or that beer, or that toilet paper. And the impact on you and your life, if you grab this toothpaste versus that toothpaste, is $2.50. Who cares? But the impact on your life, if you make that kind of a choice when you pick a realtor or a lender, or you pick your house, is $500,000. It's a much bigger deal that you're being manipulated by availability in the home buying process than it is any other time of your life. And that's why we're going to talk about availability and how it fits into this process. All right, that's the second heuristic, availability. Okay, the third heuristic. Let's talk about the third heuristic, the third shortcut that uses us, prospect theory. All right, prospect theory fundamentally is a fancy word for loss aversion, that we will do more to avert losses than we will to get gains. That losing something is much worse for us than gaining it. And in fact, it's measurable. It's 2.5 times worse to lose something than it is to gain something. In other words, you'd have to win $250 to feel as good as losing $100 makes you feel bad. Okay, people will act that way, and it's been measured in social science studies time and time again. It's 2.5 times. We will do 2.5 times more work. We feel 2.5 times worse when we lose something than we do when we gain it. Okay, and it's very tightly tied to another phenomenon called the endowment effect. That is, if we consider that we already own something, we're much more likely to act to keep it. We will put more value on it because we consider ourselves the owner of it. We could actually own it, or we could just picture ourselves owning it. And once we picture ourselves owning it, we put more value on it, 2.5 times more value, because we're afraid we're gonna lose it, than we did buying it. Happens all the time with concert tickets, for example, right? You buy tickets, you want to see your favorite band, you're going to go see U2, or I'm going to see Pearl Jam over at Safeco later this year. Fine. You're going to go, when you buy the ticket, you get the ticket. Now, what someone else is going to have to pay you to get it from you, $1,500. But if you didn't have the ticket, how much would you pay to get it? More likely, you would only pay $300. Some multiple of that. When you own it, it's considered more valuable to you. Now, this obviously comes up in the home buying process. The owner of the house thinks it's worth X because they own it. The buyer of the house thinks their money is more valuable because they own their money. That's the basis of the negotiation. So it's also why, if you're not responsible for this little item, it's very difficult to have everyone consider it a win-win, because the person giving up whatever they're giving up always feels like they're giving up more than the other side of the transaction, even though the other side of the transaction feels the exact same way, because we are all driven by prospect theory and the endowment effect. That's prospect theory and the endowment effect. So let's look at that and how that relates to home buying. The fourth heuristic that we're going to look at is confirmation bias, and its twin brother, its evil twin brother, the backfire effect. Confirmation bias says simply that when we have an idea or opinion, we will go look for evidence that supports it. We are not looking for evidence that disputes it. We're not looking to prove ourselves right in a scientific way, which would be to come up with a hypothesis and attempt to disprove it. No, we have an idea, and then we are actually constantly looking for things that support our view. That's confirmation bias. Oh, I like that person, they support my view. Oh, that person I like. We're not actively looking for people that are going to contradict our view to somehow strengthen our ability to defend it or find holes in it. So no, we're not doing that, right? So you find a house you like, you're not looking for reasons not to buy it. No, we're going to defend our view. The backfire effect simply says, and once you get stuck in that loop of defending your view, of looking for what supports your view, not looking for evidence that disputes it, but for looking for evidence of what supports it, evidence that's supplied that contradicts your view will have you double down on your original view. Study after study has been done where evidence supplied to people around a view that opposed the view that they held had them hold the original view more tightly. The backfire effect could not be less rational. I don't need a better example than the current political climate in the United States, okay? However, if you wanted to see the way confirmation bias looks in a not charged kind of way, because the politics is really charged, and I know you're all really right about your particular view about it. I know I am. But here's a little video that shows exactly the way the way confirmation bias looks as practiced by all of us in reality. So watch this little clip.
I'm going to give you guys 3 numbers, a 3-number sequence, and I have a rule in mind that these 3 numbers obey. And I want you to try to figure out what that rule is. But the way that you can get information is by proposing your own set of 3 numbers, to which I will say, yes, that follows my rule, or no, it doesn't follow my rule, and then you can propose what you think the rule is. Is that fair?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so here are the 3 numbers. 2, 4, 8.
2, 4, 8.
You don't need to continue the sequence, you can propose a totally different sequence, whatever you want to propose, and I will simply say yes or no, that follows my rule.
2, 4, 8. 16, 32.
16, 32, and
64.
those also follow my rule.
Okay.
What's the rule? What do you think?
Multiply by 2.
That is not my rule.
What?
That's not my rule. But you're allowed, if you want, propose 3 other numbers.
3, 6, 12.
3, 6, 12.
3, 6, 12 follows my rule.
10, 20, 40.
10, 20, 40.
That follows the rule.
Yeah, I'm still multiplying by 2.
I know. I know what you're doing. And yes, it follows my rule, but no, it's not my rule.
5, 10,
10 and 20.
Follows my rule.
100.
200. 400.
Follows my rule.
500, 1,000, 2,000.
Follows my rule.
Want me to keep going?
But do I just keep going? You're going to tell me your rule?
Am I doing it the wrong way? Am I approaching this the wrong way?
You're totally fine,
Okay.
but you're approaching it the way most people approach it. Like, think strategically about this. You want information.
Yeah.
I have information. The point of the three numbers, right, is to allow you to figure out what the rule is.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to give you the numbers that I don't think fits the sequence and then see what you say. So I'll say 2, 4, 7.
Fits my rule.
So whatever I propose is right?
So is your rule like you can propose any number?
So the rule is anything we say is yes.
No.
Damn it.
But you are on the right track now. Hit me with three numbers.
3, 6, 9.
Follows my rule.
Oh, that didn't follow my rule.
This is good, right?
5, 10, 15.
That follows my rule.
What? Oh. Really?
Yeah.
I don't believe this.
1, 2, 3.
1, 2, 3.
Follows the rule.
What about 7, 8, 9?
Follows. Yes, that follows the rule.
8, 16, 39.
Fits the rule.
Excellent.
But we're no closer to the rule. I want you to get to the rule. How about 1, 7, 13? Follows the rule.
What?
11, 12, 13.
How does this
follows
make
the rule.
sense?
10,
I don't
9,
know how
8.
to do this.
Does not follow the rule.
10, 9, 8 does not.
Oh, so is it all in ascending order?
Booyah.
Okay.
Up top. Yes, first
that
ones
what
to
it
get
is?
it. You guys nailed it. That's the rule. That's
always
the rule. Increase numbers in increasing order.
Aw.
Numbers in ascending order. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 25. Doesn't matter. Any numbers in ascending order. I was inspired to make this video by the book The Black Swan by Nassim Taleb. Now, the black swan is a metaphor for the unknown and the unexpected. I mean, in the old world, the theory was that all swans were white. So each instance of a white swan would make you think, yeah, that theory's pretty good. But the point is, you can never prove a theory true. And in fact, when people found Australia, they realized that there were black swans. What was interesting for me was that everyone I spoke to came up with a rule very early on and then only proposed numbers that fit with that rule they were thinking. I was looking for you guys to propose a set of numbers that didn't follow your rule
Right.
and didn't follow my rule. I was looking for you guys not to try to confirm what you believe. You're always asking something where you expect the answer to be yes, right? Like you're trying to get at it.
Yeah.
But instead you want to get the no.
You want to get the no because that's much more informational for you than the yes. Like if everything's
No, that
giving a
is
yes.
true. That is really true once you say that.
That is what's so important about the scientific method. We set out to disprove our theories. And it's when we can't disprove them that we say, this must be getting at something really true about our reality. So I think we should do that in all aspects of our lives. If you think that something is true, you should try as hard as you can to disprove it. Only then can you really get at the truth and not fool yourself.
That's the way it looks when now you're out buying a house. That is the way it looks. You have an idea, you get an idea of what you want, you get an idea of who you're going to hire to represent you, or you get an idea of the price you're going to have. You don't think the Zestimate has anything to do with the price you're married to? No, that is complete confirmation. You're going to look for evidence that supports that right away. That's confirmation bias and the backfire effect. All right, the fifth and final shortcut that we're going to look. Now, these are not the only cognitive biases out there, but these are just the 5 I use in the book. The fifth cognitive bias, the fifth shortcut, the fifth mental shortcut or heuristic that we're going to look at is something called anchoring. Anchoring is the mind's propensity to attach itself to the first thing it sees. In other words, the manufactured suggested retail price, for example, of an automobile sets the anchor. This is why it's often said the first person that speaks in a negotiation loses, because they've set the anchor. Now everything's going to go against that. It could be the opposite. The person that sets the anchor very well could be winning, because if you set the anchor far enough out, they could come down to the middle, and that's a really common way for people to want to price their house. I'll price it all the way up there, set the anchor really high, and then they'll have to come down to some reasonable price. Doesn't quite work that way in the free market sometimes, but that's the principle behind anchoring, is that, and it's not just numbers. People don't just get anchored to numbers. You could get anchored to the first house you see while you're shopping. Suppose you're in a competitive situation and you get outbid for a home, and you loved it. Now, every home that you see pales in comparison. You become anchored to that first home. Everything begins to revolve around as good as that. You could be anchored to the first home you had as a kid. You could be anchored to you could definitely get anchored to the Zestimate of a house. You see the Zestimate and you think, oh, now that creates an anchor in the mind, and now everything jives up with that. Even though the anchor has nothing to do with what's happening in the current reality. So those are some examples of anchoring. Those are some ways that anchoring works. There's examples in the book, but that's in fact the way anchoring works. It's the way, so the manufacturer's suggested retail price, we'll start with that, right? Where we started here. The dealer, you go into the car dealer, they say the car is $62,000, that the MSRP is $62,000, but I'm gonna go in the back and talk to my manager and see what we can do. The guy comes back out and says, hey, you know what? I can get you this car for $45,000. What do you think? You think that's a deal? You think that's at least, that's great, because it started out at 62. But who set 62 as the number? The dealer. He already set the anchor really high, so when he came back with 45, it sounds like a deal. That's the way anchoring works, okay? It's brutal in a negotiation, and your brain is gonna wanna do it all the time by itself. There's shortcuts, you can't help it. Now, the only thing you can do about them is be aware of them so that you don't have to get used by them, all right? And that's the point. So that's the fifth anchor, that's the fifth heuristic, anchoring.